I'd like to invite our final panelists, Sofia, Ioannidou, and Simos, Kedikoglou. So it's our final panel for tonight on venture capital investing. So maybe we'll start by giving a brief background of yourself and your activities.
Can you hear me? So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Aris and NBGI. This is my first contact with the life sciences community, so it's an honor to be here. Just a bit. Yes. So just a bit about myself. I am a scientist by background. I did an undergrad in biochemistry and a PhD in cell biology. I did actually come to this building 10 years ago when I was still contemplating a career in research, but then it did not materialize. So after my PhD, I spent 2-3 years at a biotech company in Boston called Ioannidou Pharmaceuticals, working as a research scientist. And then I switched over to the dark side of things, which is the business side of this ecosystem. I joined NBGI Consulting, which is a consultancy firm in London that has a specialized life sciences practice. So I did stay within my sector, but I learned the business side of things by doing a 2-year stint there before I joined the venture capital industry in 2009 at Edmond Rothschild Investment Partners. So just a couple of words about our fund. Edmond Rothschild Investment Partners is an independently managed affiliate of Edmond Rothschild Group. We're not a family office, as many people think, so we do actually raise our funds on the market with institutional investors or other family offices or even private individuals, and then Edmond Rothschild Group puts some money to the fund, but far from the entire amount. And we invest in life sciences exclusively, 60% biotech, 40% medtech, primarily in Europe and covering all therapeutic areas and a vast range of stages of development.
Thank you, Sofia. And Simos, you have an interesting background because you've been, you also have you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you're running a medical company, a medical device company, and you're an investor as well.
So I, just for my background, I finished the medical school here in Athens, left for the US where I did some studies on science and an MBA, worked for a few years with McKinsey but a very strange, more of a banker's job, doing primarily M&A in devices, pharmaceuticals and services. And then I ran for Boston Scientific the business development at corporate, buying companies and technologies for them. I left Boston and I ran an Israeli incubator, although the origins of the technology are in Israel, that has many medical technology exclusively companies. And since 2013, as Aris said, I'm running day-to-day one of the companies. I still have board member participation in others, and I do see deal flow, but my primary work is on the entrepreneur, on running a company, hopefully to approval and exit or IPO.
Thank you. And maybe let's start with you, Simos, and tell us a little bit about, because I'm sure that a lot of the, and I've heard it a few times in the course of today. What is it like to raise money? I mean, tell us a little bit about your experience. You just raised a very large round. I'm sure you've raised money before. So what is it? Tell us a little bit about the experience of raising money. What does it take to go out there to meet, sometimes very not hostile, but hard. VCs asking hard questions. How do you prepare for that? What is it like? What was your experience?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Hostile is a good term. So I think there is a couple of things you need to have in mind. There is the technology and the data, and you need to look at the data and the technology that you have with a critical eye. Very frequently, your initial reaction is to be very defensive, to say why it's great, and people around you tell you it's great because they work with you and for you. And that is not what you're going to face out there. You're looking at people that will put their money, that they're thinking they may lose them, and life sciences has the unique feature that a loss is a total loss. If you invest in real estate, there's something you can do with the building, but if you invest in clinical data of a failed trial, there's very little you can do. So people will be very skeptical, and you need to start preempting it by being skeptical. Look at the weaknesses. There always are. And what can you do to either improve them, manage them, or at least explain them and admit them? I see very frequently, and I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, and when they become very defensive, eventually you invest in people. And if the person is not aware or is not willing to recognize any weakness, most likely you have a real difficulty working on it and being successful for the fund and for his investment. So that's one part. The other is what Otello said, I very much agree, of networking. Most of the opportunities come out of the blue. You strategize, you think, you approach, etc. Most frequently, at least in my experience, the good opportunities come through people you know, because it's already through the big hurdle, which is, can I work with this person? Well, someone talks about him, someone I know, I trust. So that networking component is very, very important. It's another mistake that usually scientists, entrepreneurs do, of thinking just on the data. And then the third part is you need to adjust. It's a long process. We just raised, as Aris said, $30 million. It's a long process. It takes many meetings. You will hear things that you haven't thought about. And when one person says something, okay, maybe, but when two persons say the same thing, it's certainly an issue. And you need to adjust your pitch and the way you are delivering it, so that eventually you improve yourself, your chances of funding. Last but not least, don't have a big ego. I mean, people will reject you, they may be wrong. You fantasize that, they will regret. Well, they have other things to do, and probably they will forget about you. You need to be humble in raising the money. They're making a big investment on you and on the company. And I think this attitude, the people, and the willingness to improve to recognize weakness and improve on them are critical in a successful fundraising.
Okay. Sofia, you don't strike to me as particularly hostile, but you work for a VC that has a very, very good reputation. You're in your fourth fund, I believe. So
Yes.
that's quite an achievement. I mean, European venture capital, is there are only few funds that have managed to raise and be on the fourth fund. So obviously you're doing something right. Just tell me a little bit. I mean, how many investments do you guys see a year? And how many investments do you actually make a year? Just give us an idea of your ratio and what is it like, the screening ratio and that process.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So we see about 400 investment proposals a year, and they come mainly from Europe, and let's say 70% from Europe and 30% from the US. And through a screening process, at the end of the day, we invest in about 4 or 5 per year. So it is really 1%. That makes it, and because of the very, very high risk that is associated with each of these investments, and as shown before by the slides from Elias, I think the probability of success of at least for the drugs from phase 1 to market is about 10%. So we essentially need to bet against the sorry. Anyway, so we need to bet against the odds, and therefore we do a very stringent process of selection. And to reiterate some of the points that Simos mentioned, and also Otello earlier, I mean, we don't focus on 6 Ps, but close to that, and we need to essentially be satisfied on the asset. So the asset needs to be very, very innovative. It needs to correspond to or to address a significant unmet medical need, which translates to a high demand and a high market. Then the team is very, very important. So having a team with expertise in the relevant areas that can develop the asset, that's super important. And then a third aspect that we look at is the financing equation. So whether the financing equation works for us, because at the end of the day, we do need to return money to the people that lend it to us. We raise funds on the market, as I said before, and we need to return the money with some profit. So the overall financing equation needs to work for us.
And when you were describing the fund earlier, you mentioned that you invest I think 60% biotech, 40% medtech. I didn't hear digital health in that. So can you tell us a little bit why you don't invest in digital health? Is it what's behind it? Is it that you like to have IP based? You want to invest in research? I mean, do you follow more research-based investment, or are you not sure yet? Are you still waiting to see how the business models in digital health are going to pan out? What's behind that decision not to be investing in digital health, which is as we heard earlier, part of the where life sciences is going?
Yes, I think it's a number of reasons, and you mentioned some of them. First of all, it's that the sector is in its first step, so the business models are not yet proven, and we're waiting on the back seat to see what's going to happen before we intervene. That's one. Also, we have a concern on IP, so for us it's very important to invest in innovations that are patentable. And given that it's always more difficult to patent software than hardware, for instance, we tend to favor innovations that involve hardware which is patentable. So actually, the closest we've done to digital, the closest investment that we've done in the area of digital health is a company called Cellnovo that you're familiar with, Aris, since it is a co-investment between our funds. So Cellnovo has developed an insulin pump for type 1 diabetes, but it's beyond an insulin pump. It's essentially a system for the management of type 1 diabetics, and it involves a pump, a remote control system that controls the pump, and then a platform, an online platform that communicates with the remote control, and therefore is helpful for the patient, for the healthcare practitioner, and for the family of the patient eventually. So I don't know if I've answered your question. And then I guess the last point on why we're not actively doing digital health is that we're not familiar with it, and we're specializing in biotech and medtech. We've been working on those areas for at least 10 years. So it's a new area. We need to get to know it, and it's going to take a bit more time.
Thank you, Sofia. No, that's very helpful. I want to switch gears a little bit, maybe spend a little bit on time on life sciences and Greece, because and I'm sorry, Simon, I'll get back to you in a second, but I want to catch on something Sofia said, that you haven't been here as a professional before. And why is that? I mean, why have you seen any business plans that's out of your 400 business plans a year that you visit, that you review? Have any of the business plans come from Greece? Have you been active? You obviously have speak the language, and we're here now. I mean, is Greece part of the radar? And if not, any ideas maybe why not so far? I mean, there's good research here, and why haven't you made an investment in Greece?
Well, the honest answer is that we've seen very, very few business plans from Greece. So out of the 400 that we see a year, and I've been working for this fund for close to 7 years now, so you can multiply 400 by 7, I've seen maybe 2 business plans from Greece.
Okay.
So a very, very small amount. And the reason is that, as we touched upon earlier, the ecosystem is not yet developed here. So
yeah.
That's why it's not in our radar, but it's a question of supply primarily.
I wouldn't put. I'm not blaming you or Rothschild for that, but I'm just trying to understand it and see what the reality is. I mean, Simo, you have a lot of experience of because you're part of your shareholders and previous group was affiliated with Israel. You've had a lot of experiences in Israel. Israel has developed, as a small country like Greece, obviously it's very advanced technology. There's a lot of technology innovation, but they've managed to put together an ecosystem in life sciences. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in Israel, and What have you invested in Israel? What is the ecosystem like there? Give us a little bit of your experience.
Sure.
in Israel.
You're right, it's very much a good ecosystem there. It has developed over the last 25 years, and I think they have been in very difficult situations before that, and clearly it has many disadvantages in comparison to Greece, the security environment first and foremost, going in there and getting out of there. I used to fly sometimes from Athens to Tel Aviv. It takes me 10 minutes to get to the plane in Athens. From the moment I reach the airport, it takes 3 hours in Tel Aviv. And when you do it every month, it adds up. But we have a lot of similarities, which I very much agree with previous speakers, that entrepreneurship fits us. We are not, I grew up here, we are not team players very much, as we should be more, but we are very much individualistic. They are the same. We very much think we know it very well. We don't adhere. I'm stereotyping a little bit because I was born here, maybe have a bit more freedom to do it. We don't adhere very much to large teams and structure and discipline. They are the same. And when you see the entrepreneurs, which I've seen many, they are very much, they don't wear ties, they are informal, they are coming up. Every time you tell them something, they tell you why you're wrong and why it's a different idea, etc. They manage to harness this power a lot better than we have here in Greece. And I think there's 2 or 3 things that we could do better here to be able to imitate and if not be at least as good as they are. One of them is that they've exploited the relationships they have with their diaspora in the United States. I heard a lot of the funding difficulties in Greece, and I agree, there's no question. But, there's so many professors that are in very prestigious places, in universities in Europe and the United States, that people can put on an advisory board. You can very quickly, after maybe 1 or 2, after the very early seed round, go out and fund and seek funding outside of Greece. It doesn't have to be only in Greece, it's global. Sofia will tell you, everybody will tell you, at the end of the day, no one says, oh, the idea came from Portugal, I'm never going to invest. If the idea is good, they will. And the Israelis have done that very well with the United States, especially. And the other thing is that they focus on what they do best. There's this distinction that do you want to be king or do you want to be rich? And they're very much, I want to be rich. What I mean by that is they do early stage development, they do a lot of data analytics, software, etc. And then quickly the companies grow. Impulse, the company I run, is an example of that. They grow out of Israel, they go to the United States, they go to Europe, and they're okay with it. They will do something else. It's a small market, like we are a small market, and you cannot grow a global company easily just being in that only geography. So being more linked to being more globalized, taking the strengths we have, the diaspora, taking the attitude that, okay, if I start here, the next step should be Europe or the United States. It doesn't have to be the second or the third step. And the third one is being willing to focus on what we do best, I think are critical elements for success. And given where Israel used to be in 1980s, which was very backwater economy, and where it is now, I think if one uses these strengths well, you can see a very fast turnaround of the situation in Greece.
No, I think these are very, very interesting insights, which, I think, and also the geographic proximity is such that, you think that why isn't some of that, happening, earlier, but, let's, hopefully, there is, it will start happening.
Let me give you an example just to show Waze, the navigation application. The reason that it was using it very much in Israel is because it has it started from Israel, it was sold for $1 billion to Google. It very much powers what you see right now on Google Maps. The reason it took up so quickly in Israel is because it has a big button that you could, when you saw a police block, you could push the button so the other drivers knew about it. Like, you wouldn't see a German or an American company do that because it's at the boundaries of the law, right? But this was a reason why it picked up so much in Israel, and it was early stage crowds, wisdom of crowds. Basically, I was driving with friends there, and there's a block 2 miles from here. How do you know? Well, 3 drivers pushed the button on Waze. And that made enough network effect that people start using it, funding it, etc. They end up a very successful exit. These are the kind of entrepreneurial individualism that we have the Israelis have, many Eastern Mediterraneans have, to be clear, although many other countries have much bigger problems, which I think would be leveraged as good things if you put them in the right structure and not just in a structure of complaining or saying why we don't have the infrastructure of Germany or the United States.
No, that's very helpful. I mean, moving to some other geographies that are, close to us and similar, you have, Italy, Portugal, Spain that, similarly don't attract, they don't have big ecosystems like France or Germany or the UK or Scandinavia. There's no Medicon Valley or that kind of thing. But they still managed to get some investments. I mean, Sofia, I think you've done some investments in Portugal and Spain, is that right?
Well, in Spain, we did an investment last year, a company called Sanifit. So I think the Spanish market, maybe 10 years ago, was also inexistent. There were some local pharmaceutical companies that had done some spin-offs, but they were prohibitively expensive for a venture capitalist, and also the amount of innovation was not that attractive. So what was determinant in changing actually the Spanish market is the establishment of a local VC fund, Isios, which is a 60 million fund that was established, I think, at around 2009. And Isios was run and is run by former entrepreneurs and venture capitalists with pan-European and global networks. And they also had a mandate to invest across Europe. So essentially, they came to France to co-invest in a company with us, and then they said, why don't you come to Spain to invest in one of our companies? So this was determinant in essentially fostering the ecosystem and creating actually almost from scratch a biotech ecosystem in Spain that's now quite significant. And ourselves, we did an investment last year in a company from Palma de Mallorca, actually called Sanifit, as I said, a biotech
that's a nice
company.
place to go and do board meetings.
Yes, I'm not on the board, unfortunately, but it's not a bad place. So that's Spain, and I think that Spain is quite unique amongst the southern European countries, because not even Italy has a similar fund and therefore not a similar ecosystem. I have another example from Portugal where they lack a similar ecosystem, but I want to bring an example of a company that that is in our deal flow, so we're familiar with it quite a lot. So they tried to raise money in Portugal. Obviously, there was no similar structure to Isios, so no local money. Nobody from the European or global VCs would really look at them. So what they did was they took the headquarters of the company and they put them in the UK. And what this does is essentially provides investors with a legal and corporate framework with which they're familiar with. And this can also change everything. And since they did this, they've had significant investor interest, and it remains to be seen if they will attract their financing. But in any case, it has really changed the way they are approached.
So that's fascinating. I mean, you're saying, so because technology is global. It doesn't matter if it's developed in Portugal, in South Korea, in Greece, wherever. It does address a global market. So that's the premise anyway. I mean, life sciences are not here to treat a single population. I mean, they're here it should be applied globally. So so the idea is that if the local market doesn't have the financing tools, you can export that into a more convenient setting, such as the UK or France, or where you have funding and you have the sort of ecosystem of funding, and the technology might have been developed in Portugal, but that helps you or other VCs kind of look at it more favorably, because it's closer, it's in the framework, legal framework, which is more compatible and so forth. So
exactly, and I just want to stress that particular company, for instance, is keeping the personnel in Portugal. So when I said you move it to the UK, they just move their headquarters to the UK. So investor money will go into the UK, but they still retain an operation subsidiary in Portugal, which means that the jobs are there, the science is done there, and all the development of the company is essentially done there.
Thank you. That's very interesting. So, I mean, we were probably approaching the end, but I wanted to open it to some questions for Simos and Sofia, and clearly these are good examples. Please.
So
seem you reject a lot of business plans, 99 out of 100. So you seem you reject a lot of business plans, right? 99 out of 100. Do you see any common patterns in those plans, any traits in the inventor teams that are flagrant? You know, you can flag them as, oh, that's a bad one. That's a characteristic that other people who want to apply to you should avoid. And on the positive side, those 4 times 7 that you have funded, do you see any good characteristics there, any traits in the inventor teams that you can say you should strive to mimic those?
So I'm going to come back to the 3 fundamental elements that guide our investment decisions, which are the assets, the team, and then the financial equation. So a project needs to fit or to tick the boxes in all the 3 categories in order to be financed. And maybe we can take some discounts if one of the 3 categories is not perfect. It won't be the asset category, so it's absolutely, we're really very adamant about this, that the asset needs to be of very, very high quality, have top intellectual property and very good data accompanying it. So that's for sure that we don't take any discounts on that. If the management team is not complete from the start, then we are often, not always, but often willing to work with the company and help it build the right management team. And then also the financial equation that I mentioned, that's also something that is fixable. So we can, again, work with the partner on the other side of the table to work out an equation that will essentially be profitable or convenient for both of us. So it's these 3 with maybe some discounts taken every now and so often, but essentially the 3 need to be ticked.
Small discounts, not the 50% discount.
No.
Thank you.
Any more questions? So, the lady in the...
Hello. I have a question that might not just be for our 2 speakers, perhaps it's for you as well. Through the whole event, we haven't heard anything about diagnostics. Is it because this is not an interesting area for VC funding? Do you leave that for the big companies to do? Or is it because you have, although I have looked into the bubbles that you've presented at the beginning, and it wasn't, I know in vitro diagnostics lies within medtech, but there's in vivo diagnostics as well. So what do you have to say about diagnostics?
So it's not an intentional omission. I think, I would put it within medtech, and I think in the medtech slide, one of the ones that had the convergence of medtech and pharma and medtech and the other areas, I think the diagnostics was. It was maybe not mentioned as diagnostics per se, but it was there in diagnostics, as in biomarkers, which you said earlier, how important biomarkers are in the identification of therapies, personalization. So diagnostics to be able to give you a more personalized personalized reading and then tailor the therapy to you. Diagnostics, there's a big trend towards point of care diagnostics. So moving away from lab analysis towards where you go. So diagnostics features in a lot of the disruption in life sciences, but it wasn't. I mean, we didn't maybe mention it specifically, but personally, I put it within medtech. So in the slides we had it within medtech, but it was not intended not to be there. So.
I think diagnostics is a very important category. There are some features to it. People generally don't pay as much for diagnostics as they pay for therapeutics. You may call it human. That's wrong, but that's the reality. Also, diagnostics are usually non-recurring revenues, and so the business model of diagnostics is a little bit more challenging. At the same time, usually the investments are smaller. What people have done is either trying to do point of care and make it more of a recurring one, or partner it with a therapeutic and try to sell a combined package. Pfizer sells a few of their drugs, you need to pass a test first, etc. So it's a slightly different investment profile. It's usually lower pay, lower risk, lower reward, but I do think it's a very interesting one, and it's shorter timeline, which is so important vis-a-vis, for example, the therapeutics. So that makes them a quite interesting category.
There's one question back there.
Yes. I would like to ask, in your opinion, what is the one single accelerating factor for the formation of a life sciences ecosystem in Greece?
Who's going to take
The most important.
One big success. There is a lot of herd mentality. There is a lot of people that could be adjacent to it, and they would come if there is a big success. I mean, one big success, what created Silicon Valley, Hewlett-Packard? One big success. Now, how do you get that? I don't know. It's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of preparation. There is the ecosystem. I mean, Israel is the same. It had a couple of big successes. Then suddenly the young, bright student that could do other things could do life sciences. The lawyer that could go to corporate law may go to venture law. The patent attorney, the attorney that may not have been a patent attorney would go there. Once you have success, people are, it works like a magnet. How do you do the big success? You know, cluster theory. Porter has a very nice theory on clusters and how they're created, etc. You can analyze them. In my opinion, one big success would change completely the situation. People would start saying, oh, wait a minute, there's good scientists. You can look at the PubMed references, and there are quite a few. There are Greeks outside of Greece that may be willing to come. There is lower price of labor. Like, suddenly many of the negatives will become positives once people see the lens through a big success.
Sorry, just to jump in, I wouldn't agree with the question. We talk about ecosystems exactly because they're complex. And I can actually give you a lot of examples of places that had one big success but never built an ecosystem. Even in places where you had money, you had research, you had everything. So I really think it's about looking at it as an ecosystem, not as simplistically as one thing that we do, whoops, off it goes. It's really about a system.
So Leonid, I think you had a question.
I'd like to ask you about if you can see the mentality of the people that they are approaching you, if there is country-based, like if someone comes from Italy, Spain, Greece, or from UK, how do they perceive you? I mean, because I know, like from 5-10 years ago, maybe sometimes today in Greece, someone that wants to have a company and comes like to a VC is going to have in his mind, oh, these guys have the money, they're going to take care, they're not going to take care of me, they just want my brains and I'm going to work for them. I mean, that's like the bad case of mentality. But can you see this kind of, can you distinguish this kind of mentality between different countries? And maybe that's a problem that Greece doesn't invest in.
So the question is, are we perceived as evil parts of the ecosystem, and does this vary?
Do you see that from people that they are from Mediterranean countries, or from Greece, let's say, or from different countries? If someone comes from UK versus someone comes from Greece, do they have different perception of who you are?
I mean, in general, we are perceived as the evil creatures of the ecosystem, and I think that goes across all geographies. Obviously, people that have worked more with us and countries in which the profession is more developed and established will probably accept us more and maybe even like us. I don't know. At the end of the day, we're all part of the same ecosystem. So it could be a matter of familiarity, yes, and then in countries where the whole ecosystem is more developed, maybe we are perceived as less evil, but I'm not sure I see incredible geographical disparities on this.
Oh, we have a couple more questions, and I think we will.
I have one last question, and it's going to be an easy one. So, if you had to describe the best team that would guarantee, would make the higher probability of getting an investment funded, how would you describe the best team?
So this is very simple. The best team is the team that has done it before, and usually VCs like people that they like people that have made money for them before. But this is not so easy to find. It's much more common in the US because the industry is much larger than it is in Europe, so they're quite scarce, these people. And therefore, we're willing to work with people that are first-time CEOs, first-time CSOs, and they grow with the company, and we help them grow.
Maybe I can, add to that, because Europe doesn't have the the seasoned entrepreneurs, the serial entrepreneurs that have done it before. I mean, I think team is the fundamental. You mentioned assets as the fundamental sort of criterion. I think assets are important. For me, people are equally, if not important, because you can have a great technology. I mean, but if you have a lousy CEO or entrepreneur, it's not going to go anywhere. So it's the people that drive the success. It's not the technology will drive the people. So for me, if lacking this, the serial, because you don't have that as much as developed in Europe. I mean, the key attributes, and I think that's the hardest part. I mean, that's the hardest part of the job, is to try and identify who has the best chance of success, because you cannot guarantee it. But I think passion is a very important part. I mean, you need to be absolutely passionate about what you do. You need to be, a believer in it. You need to also be a good listener. You need to be flexible. You need to show persistence in something. But, so there are, I think, a few characteristics which, entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs have, that I think is, at least give you a little bit more chance to succeed. And then it's also the willingness to build a team around them, because it's not ever is one person that makes the thing work. It's finding the right people around you, hiring better people than you are, and for roles, and that's also very, very difficult. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's not. I mean, hire people that will challenge you, and then you'll be on your toes all the time by the people that you've hired. So those characteristics, those attributes are, I think, what makes a successful team. It at least gives you better odds.
Thank you for the great discussion, and also thank you for not even once, I believe, mentioning the word unicorn. Is that right?
Yes, because we're not tech, that's why.
So, but all kidding aside, if this was a panel in the States, you would have seen a lot of unicorn talks overall. But in general, what's your take on the limited partners, your funds now or earlier in your careers, and their appetite for risk? Because the risk profile of life sciences is the same wherever it is. But in the States, the appetite is more deep. What's your take? So, also to you, Ari.
Good question.
It's a good question. It's certain that in the US there's more appetite for risk in general, and also in limited partners, and there's many more specialized limited partners that invest in venture capital funds. So the way we've approached it, because we mainly fundraise in Europe, is that we tell our investors that essentially we're managing a financial product. So we view it as a financial product whereby we aim at very high returns, but we also try to control the risk very, very carefully. And then something else that's important is that we try to generate liquidity regularly, so that although we do have a 10-year fund, we don't wait for 10 years until we give some money back to our LPs. So the target is to balance our portfolio and do some investments that would generate some exits early, and then some others that will take longer. And this way, even within, say, 2-3 years from the start of investing the fund, we can generate some exits, or this is our target, give some money back, and this is important for limited partners.
Anything to add between US and Europe?
I have a slightly different take. I don't think they are most risk-taking. It's a bigger market, and the pool of funds are bigger, and they are pushed to take more risk because it's more efficient. I actually would argue that some of the LPs of European funds who are high net worth individuals or family offices are actually more risk-taking than the pension fund in the United States. But when you have $200 million to invest versus 40, you end up having to take more risk because you have more mouths to feed with these dollars. I do think that the more you see, European integration, when I mean in the capital side, the more the funds will resemble the US. I've worked very closely with US and European entrepreneurs, LPs, executives. I don't think there's a difference. It's just a bigger pools of capital there.
Thank you. So I think, if there, we're into cocktail hour now, so we should probably wrap it up. But I wanted to thank the panelists for a very, very insightful and informative panel. So, Simos and over to Vasilis.